you will all join in the salute to our nation's flag. Ready? Begin. All right, roll call and declaration of conflicts of interest.
Councilmember Abram. Here and none. Councilmember Bixel.
Here and none.
Vice Mayor Franco.
Here and none.
Councilmember Moniz.
Here and none.
Mayor Bublak.
Here and none. All right, approval of agenda as posted or amended?
So moved.
We have a motion
Second.
in 2 seconds.
Perfect.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Abram.
Yes.
Councilmember Bixel.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco.
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz.
Yes.
Mayor Bublak.
Yes. The sad stuff now. Give me a tissue. All right. Raymond Garcia Jr., please come up here, sir. Yeah, a suit and everything. You're gonna make me cry, aren't you? Come on. You sure? We could stop right now.
It's all good. I'm done.
But 40 sounds so much better than 39.
I
Okay.
think with the first grade, I'll be all right.
Okay. Okay. Whereas Public Facilities Maintenance Superintendent Raymond Garcia Jr., Ray, began his career with the City of Turlock as a building custodian 1 in October of 1984 and a fire reserve pump operator for the Turlock Fire Department in December 1984. Whereas in August 1986, Ray was promoted to Park Maintenance Worker 1. In February 1987, Ray was promoted to Maintenance Worker 2. And in July 1996, Ray was promoted to Senior Maintenance Worker. In November 2000, Ray was promoted to Assistant Public Facilities Maintenance Supervisor. In May of 2003, Ray was promoted to Public Facilities Maintenance Supervisor. And in August of 2022, Ray was promoted to Public Facilities Maintenance Superintendent. Ray has managed and implemented numerous projects and programs throughout his tenure with the City of Turlock, including but not limited to the Tree City USA program, obtaining funding and overseeing the construction of 2 spray parks, overseeing the installation of nearly all of the playgrounds in Turlock, including the wooden playground at Donnelly Park. So, the City Council, by this recognition, wishes to express its greatest appreciation to Public Facilities Maintenance Superintendent Raymond Garcia Jr. for his service, loyalty, and dedication to the City of Turlock. Now, therefore, I, Amy Bublak, by virtue of the authority vested in me as the mayor of the City of Turlock, and on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby commend Public Facilities Maintenance Superintendent Raymond Garcia Jr. for his many years of valuable service and express our sincere thanks on behalf of the City of Turlock.
Thanks, Dave. Man, that was a lot, but no, just been here a long time, and just by looking out the audience, a lot of people I worked with out here that the city. You guys all know the city's a family. It's a city of everybody. I mean, when you come to work for the city, I started like some of the recreation people in here. You start like at the lowest possible position, and you work your way through, and you see everybody. As a reserve, I was like the newest reserve, and you see the captains. You respect all the people there. And believe it or not, I was an explorer for a little bit.
What?
You know what? I kind of don't want to go there, but you know, it was like, yeah, it doesn't look good. But you know, so kind of like almost been in almost every department. I worked just really, really great with every one of the department heads here and all the past department heads. Because in my job, like I tell everybody, I think I have the best job in the city of Turlock because I get to work with every single person in the city. I mean, whether it's the chief, whether it's Isaac, and he tells me I have no money, or Eric, you know, and you know, the Muni guys, and yeah, Katie, and planning, and development, Jesse. I mean, the IT guys, even Paul. I mean, I just tell him, don't send me no more potentials, Paul. It's all good. Delete them. So. No, and then all the council people throughout the years, the mayors, and, you know, man, it's like this city, how do I say it? It's an awesome city to live in. It's like the best place, I think, in the whole state or whatever to live because it's so nice. I mean, hopefully it's hard for you guys to find graffiti on our playgrounds and our walls and stuff because our staff does such a good job every single day going out and making sure that that's kind of like one of my pet peeves is get rid of that stuff on the wall quick, so before anybody sees it. But yeah, no, so all these guys, and then TID, man, Turlock Scavenger, Gomes and Son, the Marchins family, the Gomeses, and just people that, you know, that we've worked with that make the whole city run. It's not just, you know, my guys, or sort of, it's a whole city that makes it, and all the partners that we deal with every single day that makes the city like the best place to work and the best place to live. And that's all I gotta say. Thank you, appreciate it. Thanks.
I think I messed up. Supervisor Chiesa, did you want to say something? I apologize, I wasn't paying attention here. So Ray, you got to come back through the walk, buddy, all the way. Come over here. I messed up.
Thank you, Mayor. So you value leadership, and leaders always give credit to those below them, and I heard that from Ray just now, and that's always shown tremendous leadership. I didn't work with him so much here in the city. I've known him from other lives, so we've been around each other for quite some time. But what I know is his dedication, and I wrote 44 years on here because I put your part-time service in. I wanted to give you credit just because you've been through so many. But your dedication and your servant attitude to the people of this community is unparalleled. For someone to work in public in public with public pensions and other things, it takes true dedication to put in 40 years. So again, on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, I thought it was very important to show up here today. You have meant a lot to me personally. You've been a mentor to many, and I appreciate all of your service. So on behalf of the board, congratulations.
Thanks, man. Real quick, I forgot to thank all the assessment and the street guys and the facility guys, because they're all
Let's
They're all
finish
great guys.
with your wife.
Oh, and my wife, yes. And my wife, my granddaughter, my daughter, and all my coworkers are out here, and my father-in-law who hired me,
As an explorer?
I can't say how
As an
long ago, but a long time ago. So he hired me a long time ago and gave me a chance. Exactly.
Awesome.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, let's do this, Keith. Is he here? Nobody told me this. Oh, bummer. Okay, well, Keith is leaving us as well, so we're, I'll read this since he'll come, won't he? Another time, you think? Yeah, let's hold off on that. All right, what do we got next? Oh, okay. Mr. Lewis, you're up next, sir. Good evening. I know, right?
Go right.
Here's fine. We got your back, don't worry. It's awkward.
Do you have the other one? No. Let me start with the letter first. All right. So, Mayor, members of the City Council, it's great to see you again.
Will you pull that mic a little bit towards you, please? Thank you.
Is that better?
Sort of.
Okay. Mayor, members of the City Council, it's great to see you again. I've come here for two reasons. One, to give you an update on the mobile care program, and then to talk to you about the person-centered care, long-term care program update as well. But let me speak to the specifics of the mobile care program. The city funded Community Health Centers of America earlier in the year. Since that time, they've been operating clinics in multiple places in the city, and serving about 150 or more patients. Patients range from children to adults to older adults and beyond. The mobile physician service is a primary care, acute care program, treating basic illnesses and where needed, physicals. Telehealth services are available, TB tests, vaccinations are available. People make appointments for those. So in the first 8 months of the program, with more than 150 patients being seen, let me give you some highlights of the kinds of patients that they've been dealing with. One, for example, is a family who recently immigrated as refugees from Afghanistan, brought their preschool child here because she was feeling weak. She needed a referral for labs and imaging. She was referred at no cost to the family, and I'm delighted to say that she's in much better shape than she was when she came from Afghanistan. Two female patients in their 50s were seen at a local shelter, both with flu-like symptoms pre-COVID. The physician was able to see them there, treat them, and isolate them from other individuals in the shelter. They got better quickly and successfully. A male patient in his mid-50s presented to the clinic concerned about having a fast heart rate and losing his medications. Physician saw him while he was there, was able to prescribe medications to get him back in a regimen. He got back to work within a couple of days, working for a shelter program, and is healthy and active and working. Another would be, and more tragic, a man who presented with symptoms of Bell's palsy. He was lacking appropriate medications. He wasn't sure what was really going on. The physician was able to treat him, guide him, and provide medications. Again, another great example of someone who got taken care of on the spot quickly and effectively. And there are a number of other examples. I can say a homeless man who lost all his prescriptions. They were able to get his name, relocate his pharmacy prescriptions, re-prescribe them, and he accessed them through the pharmacy part of the program at no cost to him, back on his medications, no longer a challenge. The mobile care program is serving the community as we anticipated. It's taking care of people who need a physician. It's taking care of people who cannot get in to see a physician. One of the things that they find is that there are a number of patients that come to them who are on a waiting list for 3 or 4 months to get in to see their own doctor. They come to the mobile clinic, they get seen quickly, they get seen effectively, and it doesn't matter what their income is, what their insurance card is, they just get seen as an individual from Turlock. So success, yes. Would I like to see more than 150 people? Absolutely. So in the fall, we'll start doing more vaccination programs for preparing for the next real vaccination for a post-COVID environment. They'll be out there doing those. They'll be coordinating nursing home visits where they're needed. Oftentimes, they are the sole medical care provider for people who don't know where to go. And so I can say without any hesitation, it's worked out extremely effectively, worth the investment. We'll assess again in another couple of months, come back with more definitive data, and assess whether you want to continue the program the next year. The second thing I wanted to talk to you about is the person-centered long-term care program. You may recall that this program, Legacy Health Endowment invested $750,000. The city of Turlock gave us a $200,000 grant just for Turlock residents. We have since also obtained a $150,000 grant appropriation from two U.S. senators from California, which we start drawing down today for people across the 19 zip codes. Our objective was to balance dollars not just with Turlock, but with other resources. 100% of our staff time is not charged. So anything Legacy Health Endowment does, and I track my hours so I can come back at the end of the year and say, I contributed, you don't want to know how many hours, there's no cost. And that's how we operate with these kinds of projects. The second thing was that the project was designed to help middle-income families, children of aging parents, or a caregiving spouse to make sure that they had the resources necessary to care for a spouse or a parent with multiple chronic disease conditions, limitations on activities of daily living, how to help them stay at home. Services that a Medi-Cal population is eligible for, but many middle-income families are not eligible for unless they spend down to become Medi-Cal eligible, or if they've been hospitalized and come out of the hospital and were eligible for certain services. This program is an intervention. It is the only one like it across America in a rural community, not being done anywhere else. So I talk to you about this with great pride because of how we've invested in it, both the city as well as Legacy Health Endowment. But more importantly, that Congress recognized it and has given us an appropriation for across what I refer to as our 19 zip codes. The PowerPoint gives you and you can read it at your leisure, but let me talk to you about just some specifics. So the goal was, how do we help people in our 19 zip codes? As you may recall, we treat patients from West Modesto south down to Atwater. The idea is to give them access. So our team is both for-profit and nonprofit. CareLinks is our respiratory care provider, the largest respiratory care provider in America, and they're our case manager. Community Care Choices, which is part of Community Hospice, is our palliative care provider, as well as our Hope Counseling provider. TinRx, which is an independent pharmacy in Turlock, is our pharmacy partner. And Community Health Centers of America, who run the mobile care program, are our medical care provider. Someone needs services in the home, they will send somebody into the home to care for them from a medical perspective, et cetera. So it's an interesting team of individuals demonstrating that you can bring for-profit and nonprofit partners together to bring services to people at a low cost. Go ahead. One more. The other aspect of this is, as I shared, we began focusing on a middle income population because that's where we really want to make sure they get access. In the process of doing this, we find a number of Medi-Cal patients who are participating as well. I refuse to turn anybody away. So Medi-Cal is not a barrier, but the questions we're asking the Medi-Cal managed care providers is, why are they coming to our program? And that'll be a conversation that we'll hope to have in the next month or so. But they get treated equally. The other partner I would say that we have, and I failed to mention, was a company called Jukebox. So if they identify a home where they need railings, or if they need a ramp outside the home, Jukebox is part of CareLinks. They come in, they do the work, and they're paid under the program. They've done a lot of work. We may replace Jukebox because the county has a great program where they're doing a lot of these things. We can save money and refer to that program. But the important part is the ability to take care of people in their homes. So the nice part is that people are getting services. Many are eligible for up to 30 hours a month of in-home services. There are people who have exceeded 30 hours a month. Let me give you my favorite example. The husband and wife live in Denair. Mom is 101. They are her sole caregivers. They refuse to put her in a long-term care facility. This just gets to your heart. 30 hours a month, they asked for if we would increase it to 40 hours a month. Why? Because they could get respite. So they could actually leave the house, know that mom was with somebody who was trained, who was safe, she was comfortable with, and their lives got better. It's not perfect, but they're taking care of mom, which is the most important thing. We're able to build services around that to help those individuals. We have a woman living in a mobile home park who really was stuck in her mobile home for a variety of reasons, some of which was her size. But when it was assessed, the way to get her out of there was to identify services, but to make her mobile. So through our program with the Turlock assistance, we got her an electric scooter. Now she's out and about. She's shopping for herself. She's not homebound. She's doing the kinds of things that somebody at her age should be doing and taking care of herself. She can go to urgent care if she needs to go. She can go anywhere. If she needs help, she calls her caregiver. But the importance of this is the independence that we're trying to give these individuals so that they know that a long-term care facility is not in their future. They can stay home for as long as possible. Go ahead. Patients are assessed in total perspective. The home is assessed. The individuals are assessed. You talk to the spouse if there is a spouse or a partner, a child of an aging parent if they're participating, et cetera, to make sure that we know what's going on, what does the patient really need, what does the caregiver need, what does the child of an aging parent need, even if there's a spousal caregiver. It still helps to ask the child what do they think they need, and what do they think mom needs. 68% of the enrollees in the program in Turlock are women. I'd say 40% or more are, 60% or more are over age 60, and 40% or more are over 75. So as Turlock residents are aging in place, they're getting access to these services. They're hearing more about what we're doing. Most troubling and not surprising is the impact of chronic disease, what we see. 47% of the patients in Turlock talk about mobility challenges, not just outside the house, but inside the house. So that's ramps, grab bars, replacing toilets so that they can lift up. What do you need to survive independently? We find patients with chronic conditions, typically cardiovascular and diabetes are common. Councilmember Bixel, I'm sure you see a lot of these patients today. They are mixed with other challenges as they are aging in place. So 24% report being diabetic or with cancer. And most troubling is 82% report 3 or more conditions. So as this person is getting older and these conditions get worse, their needs will grow exponentially. This infrastructure that we've created with your help, and thank you again, is helping them remain in their homes independently without fear of cost and without fear of having to spend money that they may or may not have. Part of the theory that we've used here is, from the middle income population, is how do you protect the middle income spouse from not spending down her assets? Because in most cases, it is the caregiver is a female, so it's the wife taking care of the husband. How do we protect her spousal income? Because at this point, as Councilmember Moniz knows well, unless you divorce your spouse to protect your retirement income is not protected. The state allows you to protect a certain amount of money, but at the end of the day, for a middle-income family, you could be placing a lot of it in jeopardy. Our objective is protecting that spouse. And in most cases, our second goal is, how do we ensure that the face of poverty and old age isn't a female face? This program goes directly to address those kinds of issues. Go ahead. The self-reported needs, so 95% of the people in the program report at least 2 limitations on activities of daily living: bathing, getting dressed, going to the bathroom, simple things, cooking, as well as more complex things. But 82% report 3 limitations in activities of daily living. I suspect if we do a correlation between age and the limitations in activities of daily living, it will be even larger numbers and even more fearful. And 20%, almost 20% report every category as a limitation for them. So this is in some respects, in some communities, this is a pre-nursing home population. In this community, that's not the case because of the intervention that we're building around them. You're building that family unit around them, even if it's not their family, to make sure that they know that they're secure. I threw this in here just so you could see the multiple chronic disease conditions. Again, note that 82% report 3 or more chronic conditions. So it's not just activities of daily living. I'd add on top of that chronic conditions, diabetes, cancer, congestive heart failure, et cetera, valley fever. They combine and they knock the heck out of somebody. Go ahead. We find people who are food insecure. So we have a food assistance program built into the, we've used almost $8,000 for food assistance to make sure people are getting meals, 1 meal a day or 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. We partner with different entities to make sure that they're getting fed, and it's low salt or whatever kind of diet product we need to do, as well as looking for other providers. So we'll be soon having a conversation, she doesn't know this, with 10th on Green, who produce these magnificent meals where they can do low salt, all kinds of things, and are one of the most generous philanthropists in terms of the food world anywhere in the state. Go ahead. Home modifications. This is one of my favorite charts because we've taken care of 30 people with jukebox in terms of evaluations. The intervention, which is most, we've only spent so far $7,000 on those interventions. But when you think about the cost of a day of hospitalization, again, and you look at what $7,000 worth is compared to $30,000 to $35,000, the numbers speak for themselves. And the objective is, how do I help you stay independent? The grab bar, you might not want them, but you learn real quickly, it helps. In the shower, how do we help you take a bath or a shower? Go ahead. Same thing with durable medical equipment. I shared with you the story about the woman we brought the scooter for, who is wonderful. But there are other things you use in terms of wheelchairs, people who needed a wheelchair and didn't know where to find one. A 3-in-1 chair in terms of being able to move around. As well as we had one person who, to commute, bed sores. You call them whatever you want, but at the end of the day, it's a bed sore. We bought them a new mattress and made sure that they had the egg crate that went underneath their sheets to help protect them. And they get checked, no bed sores. So you buy a mattress, you protect them against bed sores, the cost of all those things, the numbers speak for themselves. So in Turlock so far, we're averaging about 21 hours a month in terms of each individual, in terms of care. It's about $24 an hour for the caregiver who's providing that service. So if you think about on a monthly basis, it's about $655. But if you look on the right and you think about what's the cost compared to, assisted living, in a single room is about almost $6,000. A semi-private room in a nursing home is almost $11,000. And, a private room is over $12,000. And those are low numbers, because if you can find a nursing home bed, it's going to be more than, and you don't have long-term care insurance, or even if you have it, the cost is much higher than $12,000. Again, $655 a month for these kinds of services for taking care of these people versus those kinds of numbers. So it gives you a sense of what it costs, as well as what the future looks like for an aging population across, as children of aging parents or as people who have disabled adults. We take care of disabled adults as well. So, go ahead. That might be it. Okay. So one of the things that we're looking at for the future, which is today, I'm sure you all read the newspaper and locally, and you see increasing stories about kids on the spectrum, or what we refer to as children with intellectual disabilities. Most of those kids qualify for Medi-Cal. The parents typically do not. So while they may qualify for help from the Valley Medical Regional Center, if you can find a provider to come into your home, if they'll come into your home, and there's no respite care other than a few hours here, maybe 8 hours, but not on the weekend. So imagine that you're a married couple. Doesn't matter what gender you are, you're a married couple. You have a child who's an intellectual disability, or you have an older adult with an intellectual disability, one or the other. You're on call 24/7, 365. You don't get a break. If you want to go someplace, you're taking him or her with you, unless they're in a bed, medically and unable to travel, and you go nowhere anyway. So now we're looking at, how do we help the family, not the child who gets help, but how do we help mom or dad with respite services? So I'm traveling off to Connecticut to look at something, a program they have up there, and another program actually in Vienna, Virginia, that I get to go back and look at, similar for respite care services, to figure out how do you build that solution in Turlock, or for kids from both counties, so that families can get that kind of long-term care relief. And what it translates into is giving you a weekend off. So let's say every 6 months, you can disappear for a month, for a weekend. A month would be great. But you can disappear for a weekend, and you can do whatever you want, whether it's, nothing, and you go to a hotel, but you just get out of the house. You give yourself that mental health break and that physical health break. Because combined, as Councilmember Bixel knows exceedingly well, mental health and the physical health impact on the parent of a child with intellectual disabilities, or an older adult who is aging in place, as his parents are over 70 and he's in his 40s. But he's never lived alone. And those parents worry about who's going to take care of him. How do I transition him? So we're beginning to look at that next, and to figure out, how we can build those solutions so that Turlock is a community across Stanislaus as well as Merced counties where people can come to and know that these services exist using a combination of public dollars as well as charitable dollars. And I'll stop there.
Questions for Mr. Lewis?
I have a question. Thank you, Mr. Lewis,
Sure.
for coming today. Can you share with us kind of generally for the person-centered care, how people are being referred to the program? Is it self-referral? Is it coming from somewhere else?
Multiple referrals. Self-referral, word of mouth is a lot. The fellow who I referred to with the mother who's 101 lives in Denair. They've been referring people through Denair Lions and elsewhere. Great source. They say the Denair Lions rock. So shout out to them. And then we're using social media, et cetera. It's an ongoing aggravation. You know, you want more people to enroll in the program. You keep telling them about this. So you try all these resources. We use the County Area Agency on Aging for assistance, disability programs, et cetera. So there's no one method. It's, you know, you're throwing a lot of stuff against the wall to see what sticks on that day, and the next day you try again.
Other questions for Mr. Lewis? We look forward to hearing from you again. Thank you
Oh, I
so
look
much
forward
for
to
your
it.
efforts.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to Parks, Arts, and Recreation Commission. I would like to nominate and recommend reappointment of John Snook to the Parks, Arts, and Recreation Commission.
Motion.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Bixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, and welcome back, John. Passes with 5-0. All right, now we have a briefing from Mr. Petrolakis on qualifications for city grant recipients.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. The mayor brought to the attention, and I think it's come up at council meetings too, but to me and the city manager about qualifications for city grant recipients and coming up with a local policy, a city policy on those. And so I did a very brief a blessedly brief PowerPoint to get the discussion going so we can get some council direction tonight on what you would like it to see. So we'll go to the next slide. Some examples of the grants the city provides, HUD programs such as CDBG, where the city awards public service grants that you've heard about and acted on, and then community grants done by your the recreation part of your public works department, and that's funded by transit occupancy tax. So those are different sources of funding. The first one being, federal dollars, and the second one being local tax dollars through the TOT tax. The community grants have a maximum of $3,000 per event or activity. I asked Director Quintero, it's not a uniform rule, but the public service grants example, I think she told me about $10,000 was a good average number, and she'll jump up or just wave if I'm getting something wrong. So those are the types of grants the city awards. So we were thinking about how to present this to the council, and on the third slide, which being a federal government standard goes into the fourth slide, but on the third slide, these are the block grant, the standard required documentation in a block grant, okay, that the city is supposed to collect as part of the application process. So you'll see that the articles of incorporation, the bylaws of the organization, certificate of good standing with the state, that would come out of the Secretary's State office, state and federal tax exemption determination letters, a list of board members, the authorization to request funds, meaning that the individuals with the application are authorized to request the funds, and then on the next slide, similarly, officials authorized to act on the funding, an organizational chart of the organization, resumes of the program administrator and fiscal officer, annual financial statements and audit, a conflict of interest questionnaire, which also has this discussion of the conflict of interest provisions, and documentation of compliance with national object, and the national object is, what what the funding is for, right? You have to prove which of the national priorities it's being done for. So this was no original research from me. Director Quintero is using Cloudburst Consultants to help revamp some of the policies related to that department and these kind of funding obligations. So But this was the best kind of baseline list, we could come up with of what is required, at least as part of that, of the federal program. So then we sort of thought about, well, what things are not on here? And I didn't do a slide for this one, because this will basically be part of the discussion. So what other things might be part of this discussion that might be of interest to the council? So the staff came up with, current business license with the city, you probably would normally want to see. This one was interesting, no debt owed to the city, for something, and I think those were the major ones. Then I made the mistake of doing some online research, and it could go on and on, I think, right? I mean, you could, there's an attorney general, basically charities have to do an annual renewal form, so the attorney general knows about you because they're the ones responsible for financial mismanagement of charities, so there's a report there. There's our, which I think was addressed actually in the HUD guidelines, so I don't have to think about that one. But if you add requirements for the federal programs, if we add things to the HUD list, HUD will, they'll make that part of your compliance checklist, right? You'll be held accountable for any local things you add to it. So that is the baseline, and the question is, when it's not money, when it's not federal money that would be governed by this, do you want the same policy or similar policy? So we can go to the last slide, and these are just some questions that occurred. And should there be requirements for both nonprofits and for-profit organizations? We do have an example or two on your local community grants that, where funding is given to a for-profit organization for a legitimate public purpose. Then we get into, do you want us to do a survey of all the departments and make sure we're capturing all the grants? I would think maybe the answer is yes to that one. And do you want the requirements to apply to all of those? Then the issue came up, it's kind of creative how, the staff's very creative. So these are kind of, when grant means we're awarding money to somebody for something, right? But there are other examples, like in our fireworks ordinance, where we're issuing a permit to sell fireworks, for example. There's some basic reporting requirements in there, that are supposed to be part of the application. So how broadly do you want this to apply? How broadly and how deeply do you want it to apply to things that aren't the city awarding money? I think the city awarding money, I think, raises kind of obvious, special concerns, right? But the question is, do you want us to go further afield than that? Should there be a minimum amount of grant funding where the requirements don't apply, or where there's sort of a short form of the requirements? There are no exemptions. I asked Cloudhurst, the consultant, there are no such exemptions or lowering of requirements for the federal money. I found that interesting, so I passed that information along. And then also the issue is, what do you want us to go to things like, we were thinking in terms basically of these grants, and we have two examples of I think, the most well-publicized grant programs that the city has. But do you want us to get into home rehabilitation, where there are forgivable loans? There are other HUD programs that are also based not just home rehabilitation, but that are larger amounts of money that aren't necessarily a grant. There's some sort of financing that's forgivable over time. Do you want those kinds of things covered? And let me just stop there, because you know what I know now. So we eagerly await council direction.
Questions for Mr. Petrolakis?
Yes, I have a question. So you went over the policies and procedures for the CDBG funds, but you highlighted the transient occupancy tax funded community grants. What is our current process for that?
Director Schultz could probably speak to it better. He did send me the form. I didn't see You know, those are a maximum of $3,000, so it's a, you know, that is, I would say, more focused on what is the money being applied for? So the questions are, I think the department's looking for the public benefit of the money. But I'll let Eric address it.
I think the city attorney kind of summed it up, but it's an application process that goes out that each applicant fills out, and then it comes back to our Parks, Arts, and Recreation Commission, to where they score those and they bring back the recommendation to council to approve. We had $50,000 this year. We had 30 applicants. 19 are going to be recommended for funding, and of those are a mix between profit, nonprofit, and some of them are just groups that aren't affiliated, like a mom's group that don't have any status whatsoever. So it's really a mixed bag.
Let me ask you a question. So if you find that what they took the money for was not that, it wasn't used for that, they have to pay it back?
Yes, they have to submit all their receipts per what they submitted for in their request. And if they don't, we only had one occasion over, gosh, I've been this almost 10 years, minus COVID, where we had one event that didn't happen
Right.
because it was a rain out and they had to refund their money.
Other questions for Director Schultz? Questions for Mr. Petrolakis?
I'd prefer Director Schultz, but whatever the council's desire is.
So I have a question, Mr. Petrakis. Sorry, I don't think this is Mr. Schultz's question. I don't know if I had the conversation who with, but we were talking about getting a cap, making sure that the nonprofits have a cap on their administrative overhead. And what I'm talking about is there's a nonprofit, they collect $100,000 a year, but $65,000 a year goes to their director's quote salary. And that's not really a nonprofit. And I know the industry standard is somewhere between 15 and 18%. Have we looked at that at all?
No, I'd say no, we haven't looked at that. I think that, I think I was asked the question of, you know, one thing that, I mean, that HUD list is so long. I mean, you know, basically, if you're a nonprofit, you have to do some filing with the federal government, a 990, and I think there's 3 levels, you know, under 50,000, which is like the EZ form. You know, you just file a postcard saying, we didn't do more than 50,000 a year. I think the next one probably goes up to 200,000 and then over 200,000. So the full form, I know, includes some overhead information, right? It includes the most highly paid, you know, employees or the most highly compensated individuals have to be listed on that form. So, and I'm not enough of a tax man to know, so I don't know if our finance director knows, but it's pretty, you know, it's pretty extensive. It's like a tax form, so you could probably get some sense of their, you know, their overhead expense. I don't know if I didn't think to look if they asked that particular question. It wouldn't surprise me in a way if they're asking how much, you know, is being spent on overhead, so we can look at that.
Yeah, I would like us to look at that. I would just like to know, and if we're not doing it, we definitely need to look at it, because I don't think we should be giving money to somebody who's calling themselves a nonprofit and doing things like that. We have a nonprofit in our county, and their regional manager made $424,000 last year for an annual salary. That's not a nonprofit to me. The other thing I wanted to know is, so all these documents that you've listed off, have we been checking those on all the money that we've been giving people to?
I don't know. Maybe Director Quintero can help me with that one. I think she told me maybe not, but I don't remember I mean, I'll let her speak to it maybe.
On the public service grants, we do request extensive documentation. This, in working with Cloudburst, is a new update to the policies and procedures to have all of the details from the regulations. So we'll have to look back if I can't say for sure we've checked every document that's listed, but going forward and having our updated policies and procedures, we absolutely will.
Question.
Do they self-report, or do they, or do we require that on a certain day of the year, they all need to be in, all the documentation needs to be current?
It is typically has to be submitted with the application. The public service grants, for example, they're applying at a certain time of the year, so all that documentation has to come in with that application.
But we don't check everybody, that any of the nonprofits or for-profits that are receiving money, we don't just automatically get every year an update that, you know, here's the board of directors, here's our financials, here's all of the requirements that are in here. We don't automatically get them.
No, we don't get them automatically.
We did have that discussion about, it's kind of interesting, because, I'll give you my reaction. When I first read that list, I was like, that's a long list, right? So one thing we thought about is it's sort of it'd be similar to the contractor pre-qualification, right, that you can do, right, that you've talked about, Councilmember Franco, more than once, and it's on our staff aspirational list to get us there. So we thought about our staff aspirational list, and you could have kind of a pre-qualification system for, city grants where people just, submit the information and then they're kind of eligible to apply or something like that. And I don't know if that's practical, could create more work, but it's a long list. So the issue is there's a certain disadvantage then for less sophisticated nonprofit entities, right? Where if you're an executive director making $450,000 a year, my suspicions, I'm going to have a strong suspicion that your paperwork's going to be in order. Where if you're some sort of, I think Director Schultz sort of talked to it, it'd be an unincorporated association, right? Which is just a bunch of people getting together that want to do something good, right? Maybe it's a one-off, or maybe it's even an annual thing, so it all comes in all different shapes and sizes. So I think maybe that should be a consideration too, about, how we handle it.
I guess maybe a question for Director Schultz. Do you see the same people every year requesting grants? Or I should say, same organizations?
We do have some repeat, but we generally also have new ones, so it's a mixed bag.
Okay, let's open it to public. Anyone wishing to speak on this?
Good evening. Okay, does this work? I think this is, my comments would be for the larger grants, the CBDG and home and other grants like that. The IRS tax status, list of board members, that's all good stuff. But for some of these organizations, especially the larger grants, for like Family Promise, let's say, for example, to where you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, you buy a property, you renovate it, you give it, a forgivable loan to an organization. We need to have metrics. What do they do? What do they accomplish? Okay, reports from them about, yearly, what has been accomplished with that money that we've given them. How else can the five of you know whether or not that's the way to spend that money, or you should be spending it in another way? Okay, so as far as I know, that hasn't been done. Matter of fact, I've been asking for more than a year for information about, what's been happening in the nonprofits. I've had a PRA in for more than 7 months asking simple questions, the type of stuff that Mr. Lewis gave up here, to where he gave examples without naming names. He was able to say, we accomplished this with this individual, we accomplished this with this individual, so on and so forth. Okay, we should be asking the same out of these other organizations, especially when I hear stories, the Vice Mayor knows about it, of a family of 6 that was in the Soderquist properties that the city bought and gave the family promise. They were evicted and they ended up on the street. Now, you were told beforehand, if I remember correctly, by Mayor Pitt, that family promise said they would be there every step of the way with the family to get them to self-sustaining, that's not the right word, but, to be on their own. Now, what happened, I don't know, but I don't like to hear that, we spent all that money, a family was there with a little boy 5 years old, and they ended up on the street. So there needs to be transparency, there needs to be accountability, and I think that's part for the larger dollar amounts, not the smaller little garden club type organizations that you should be asking for. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, let me close the public comment, bring it back for comments.
I have some comments.
Michael, did you, this is about just this, not the public comment yet. Yeah, sorry. Almost there, buddy, almost.
Okay. Closing comment again.
Any comments? No.
Okay.
Yeah, I already closed.
I think Finance Director Moreno has said it before that Turlock's no longer a small city, so we need to upgrade our procedures. Handshakes and nods and verbal agreements aren't any good anymore. So I would like to see us consider anything that the city funds. I would like to see the same procedures be handled by everybody. I guess if anything's less than a certain amount, it would be okay. But for the most part, I think that everybody should be subject to the same rules that everybody else is. I don't think that there should be a well, since you're doing this, you don't need to give us all of your information. I think it's important that we get it. City of Turlock can also be liable if we do not get all of the information, such as insurance policies, and if there's a workman's comp policy necessary and they have employees and they don't have one, if someone gets hurt, that's going to fall back on usually on the biggest, deepest pockets, and that's the city of Turlock. So I would really like to see us upgrade our policies, because it's when we get lax that we get issues. So that's my comments.
I would just like to echo what City Attorney Petrolakis was saying, that, the federal government list is seemingly pretty robust, and I don't want to see us get into a situation where we're creating bureaucracy for bureaucracy's sake. So kind of if, this nonprofits, businesses needing to have an active business license, needing to know, if is there debt to the city, like, we should know that kind of stuff. Like, we can provide that information. I understand and echo what Vice Mayor Franco was saying about this should be fair, and, money going out, we want to make sure it's serving its intended purposes, but I don't want us to get in a situation where we are disadvantaging small nonprofits, because, if I'm going to grab my soapbox a little bit, like, nonprofits of all sizes are serving purposes for social services and things that, we as government can't or won't do sometimes. And I don't want to see the well-intentioned, upgrading our policies and making sure we're with the times and doing everything right, hurt what is happening in our community, especially with, the community grants. Those are very often put on by small businesses, by, local groups and things that are trying to serve and support our community and support our economy. And I feel I see a lot of tension potentially in this. If we make this too hard, then we are getting in the way of things that really bring a lot of benefit to our community.
Anybody else? I agree that nonprofits are hugely important, and that was why it was the onus of the state of Turlock recently. However, we are the shepherds of the people's money. The taxpayers' money is not mine, and for that sake, accountability must be the first thing that we think about. Most every single nonprofit knows that they have to file their taxes, and so it's not a surprise to them. When Mr. Petrolakis spoke regarding having it like a building, where it's not the onus on our people to have to find that. Here's the requirements, just put it there, because you're filing with the taxes, you're doing the right things. So just put it in, and submit it to us. I don't see that being hugely difficult. I could say if a group was only going to get $3,000 in a year, that, okay, maybe we don't need to go crazy. But most frequently, we have at least 2 offerings, and they end up being the same groups the second time around. And I'm not saying a specific one, I'm just saying in general. So if they're only gonna ask for 1 in a year, then okay, let's see what happens. But I think we're supposed to be responsible for the people's money, and if we're just handing it out and we like people and we don't think about, like, okay, are they legit? Are they doing the right thing? Because then other ones could come and get it that feel like, oh, everybody always gives to them. So I think we have to be really cognizant of what we do as accountability and transparency of the people's money.
I would just like to echo, I agree with that, but we don't need to reinvent the wheel and make it, too many layers of bureaucracy, and just, I mean, as simple as it can be, but yet taking care of business.
If there's not a checklist that we're using now, then there's a problem. So if there's a checklist and we don't know if we're doing it on a regular basis, that's a problem. So if we make sure that checklist amounts to, and especially anything over $100,000, we need to know a lot of things, right? I think that's important. And I would agree with Councilmember Moniz that I wouldn't want to go over 15% on administrative. We don't, if a nonprofit's not supposed to be for the administrators making money, it's supposed to be to help these groups help our community.
I mean, I think we're in agreement on we want transparency, we want accountability, but I do not want to add extra layer of burden on nonprofits who are really trying to do the right thing. And we don't need to the government should not be getting in people's way of doing the right thing for the community.
Just coming from the standpoint of a contractor. So a subcontractor works for me. They know that when they go into a contract with me, they have to have workman's comp, general liability insurance. They have to show me their contractor's license, and a few other items. So I think it's not really a burden to ask every year that someone that is expecting to get money from the city of Turlock know that these are the items that you're going to need. You need to give them to us every year. It needs to be on a certain day every year. There's a checklist. You turn them in by a certain day. If you don't turn them in, then you're delayed on your funding until you do. Put a small burden back on the person that's getting the money. Just a small checklist of things is not going to be a huge burden. And it's important that we would be very fair with the list. Yeah, I agree that when we get into the $100,000 range and up, the list needs to be a little more detailed. But even if you're getting, $5,000, you should have a checklist, and at the very least have a city business license, I would think. Anyway, I think that a small checklist with a bigger checklist for the larger recipients would be in order.
But we have a checklist, right? Like, we have a checklist for CDBG.
Not really.
For CDBG, yes, I do CDBG every year, and there's a checklist from Exhibit A to Exhibit A-N-O, somewhere there. It says everything that we need to have, and it's all of those things. That was.
Katie, can you speak to, again, just where the checklist is, and just in all honesty, are we holding people accountable on it on a regular basis? No blame, just yes or no.
For the public service grants, that's part of the application and submittal for when other funding, in other capacities is used. I would have to check, but I would say the public service grants definitely are, and the others, I don't think we've been as diligent with the checklist.
Appreciate the honesty.
We have a checklist. I am in complete agreement that we need to follow it. I do think that we're venturing into the waters of added bureaucracy. If we're going to come up with some rule that every July 1st, if you want to ever have any business with the city, that you have to fill out X, Y, Z. At the time of submission of, your search for a grant, you're seeking a grant, that's fine. I'm I'm asking my colleagues for just, let's make sure that we're finding a middle ground here where it is making sense and we are not getting in the business's way or nonprofit's way.
Mr. Petrilakis, do you have enough understanding of where we're going with this, or do you need some questions?
Absolutely not, Dawn. So let me ask you a few questions.
Do you want to go through the check?
Oh, I mean, I had a vacation finally, so I'm in a good mood. So, okay. What about for-profit? Do you want me to, it'd be different, you know, I mean, there's actually a lot more, it's interesting. There's a lot more information that nonprofits have to report than for-profit entities, right? So they would be different lists, but because we do give community grants to nonprofits, you could also have,
These are
there are
for-profits.
for-profit, low-income housing developers, right? That would be similar on kind of on the bigger end money. They're not all nonprofits.
Yeah, I would
you
think
know.
that you would want
So,
everything to
So-
be equal, yeah.
yeah, okay. But the information will be different because the reporting requirements are different.
Well, your tax returns are different.
Yeah.
You know, you're not doing a 990 instead.
Yeah, right.
Instead.
Well, but I mean, do you really want us to ask for their tax returns? I mean, those are pretty
yeah.
highly guarded. you
Well,
know,
I mean, a tax return for a nonprofit's online.
I know, but
I mean,
yours isn't and mine isn't online, right? Available to the world. That's
I'm
pretty-
also not asking for city money.
Well, true. I mean, a bank would see it.
Well, a for-profit, low-income home builder, there aren't many. They would be probably a not-for-profit or a nonprofit. I guess that would be a question that we would need to answer before we put everything in motion, but I still would like to see that, number one, they would have the financial wherewithal to be able to complete the project.
I think the difference is that can I argue for a second?
Sure, absolutely, you're attorney.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
That's what lawyers do.
I appreciate the laxity or the ability, because I think, I mean, the one example I remember, because talk about aspirational lists. I believe I like to read. Okay, now how many books do I really read? But I'm a great buyer of books. Okay, so I noticed that one of your local bookstores got a $3,000 grant for, I don't even know if it was. Well, I got it here. The Passport to Summer Reading, right? So that strikes me as great, and they're encouraging people to read, and so in that case, I do think requiring a for-profit entity to hand over their tax returns probably is a disincentive to asking the city for $3,000. Now, on the other hand, I would understand it for, some big development project that's using CDBG or home funds or something, then that's probably required anyway, so it's not going to be an issue, right? So are we on is that close? Okay. I see, well, you already answered. You want us to do a survey. We'll see if any other grants are given to the city. Do you want us to venture into when it's not a grant? Again, I think the forgivable loan scenario we talked about will take care of itself, because that's largely a HUD thing unless you do it yourselves. But Director Quintero did give me an example or two where we might do it ourselves, I think. But we'll address that when we come back. Do you want us to venture into the permits, like the fireworks example I gave, where we're allowing,
I would say that $3,000 or less, we don't try and make this a burden.
so have a very
I would
basic
even say
list for that?
$5,000 or
Very
less,
basic
but-
list, okay.
Yeah, and then if
Okay.
they're not receiving money, they're receiving a permit, I think that's kind of a different animal. I wouldn't think we'd need to have all of that information from somebody that's getting a fireworks permit.
We'll just send the fire chief out.
Let's act like I have enough information before I give you any more ideas about anything. We'll stop right there.
So you comfortable? Do you want to go through yes, no, or on your little question theory? Would that help, or you're good?
I think I got him.
All right.
I think
Outstanding.
Or I'm gonna act like I got him, and then, we can have the discussion next time.
Okay, so closing that up and opening the public participation, I do have a list here. And I got Michael going first. Come on. It's your turn.
Michael Joel Gonzalez,
The
Street
first.
1. Turlock City Council meeting, today's date, to all ranks of life. American Resolve in just 5 minutes or less, number 10. Number 1 is 1, blessings. Number 2, Michael Avenue, Michael Street, Michael Road, driveway, court, curb, and roads, and junctions. Number 3, Michael's Arts and Crafts. Blessing number 4, the Family Merit Badge. Blessing number 5, A&E Network, the A&E Network, Arts and Entertainment. Blessing number 6, the Boy Scout Handbook. Blessing number 7, Cinematography, Merit Badge. Blessing number 8, Booked, Season 1 on A&E. Blessing number 9, to the President of Life, from the Life Saving Merit Badge. That's blessing 9. Blessing 10, the World Merit Badge. Blessing number 11, 52 states of activity directors of the United States of America. Blessing number 12, the NAP, National Activities Directors Awareness Week. Blessing number 13, helpfulness. Blessing number 14, more American resolves in just 5 minutes or less. Blessing number 15, aviation merit badge. Blessing number 16, mock surveys and state reviews. Blessing number 17, my knapsack. For Michael's, they're really cute, matches my hat. Blessing number 18, the journalism merit badge. Blessing number 19, patience are a virtue. Blessing number 20, the health merit badge. Blessing number 21, the boy plant, Anthurium, Hawaii state flower. Blessing number 22, the troops A to Z. Blessing number 23, chapters everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Vinita? Yeah, please.
I want to make sure I don't get shocked. It's been quite a while since I've been here. My name is Vanita. Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, other staff, public. I have a pretty simple request. I'm still doing spaying and neutering. And once a month, because I know animal control is very busy, and I know all you departments work differently, but I have a big request. And I don't want to sound selfish or anything, but there hasn't been any funding for spaying for months. And as I said, I've been making one call a month because I know how busy they are out there, and not just here in Turlock, but Modesto and everywhere else too. There's an overabundance of cats, puppies, kittens, dogs everywhere. I mean, twice the number capacity in these places. And part of the reason is because either there's no funding for spay and neutering, or people just don't care. And in my little corner, I thought I was all done. Every single cat had been spayed and neutered. And I was sure I was done, but I'm not done because there was a drop-off and a couple other cats showed up. So here I am again. But since there hasn't been any funding, I went, bothering my neighbors a little bit. Hey, well, here's what I'm doing now. Guess what? Spay neuter time again. And mostly, I've been spending my own money. And I cannot spend one more dime on my own. Okay, so the problem I have now is I've got 3 kittens that I'm training to live outside because there's nowhere to take them. There's no rescue, foster, anywhere, not south, not north, and nowhere. So, fine, I'm training them to be outside, but they've got to be spayed first. And I mean, I'm tapped out. And I did bring a couple bills just to show that I have been spending a lot of money. Okay, to me it's a lot of money. But just for the spay neuter and a couple rabies shots and some other things, I've spent $333. That's without gasoline, a litter, recuperating, other supplies, paper towels, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I have gotten $56 to help out with that. But still, that's a lot of money for me. I'm a fixed income, retired, so forth. So yes, in my little corner, I'm very proud that all the cats are done. There's only 5 local cats around. That's it. There used to be, 15, 18, and they were sick, diseased, fleas, everything. And now there aren't. And I'm very happy about that. But I've got to get these 3 done. I have to get them done. I have no other recourse. I've tried everywhere. I've tried everywhere from Modesto, just name a town. I've tried. And there is no help out there for me. And, I'm just requesting some funding, and I hope you all can help me out. Thank you.
Perhaps an offline conversation with Chief Hedden would prove fruitful. You've met him before?
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Brad Hanson. Welcome.
Thank you. First time or two.
Nice.
So I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Brad Hanson. I'm from Southern California. I've been here for 10 years now. Turlock's my residence, and I've been retired. When I first came here, I was introduced to Faith Home Teen Challenge out here, a great nonprofit, and started volunteering. Fell in love with them, and started helping them out, just off the record, and using some of my skills from Southern California. When we hit COVID, we lost all the fundraising that everyone else did. So we had to come up with an idea. I used to play a lot of golf in Southern California, and they do these things called ball drops, where they sell golf balls at the end of a tournament, and maybe the tournament race is $40,000, but you sell golf balls for $25 a piece. Maybe you raise an extra $5,000. So I went to a teen challenge. A friend of mine that worked there named Louie, who was in charge of fundraising, let's do this ball drop, but let's not have it an adjunct to a golf tournament. Let's have the main event. We have 30 acres out there at Faith Home. We did it. Their executive committee said, we don't really want to do this. We don't want a new event, but we tried it anyway. So the big expense on a ball drop, it's just a raffle. You sell balls and drop them out of a helicopter. Here's the helicopter. So we contacted Sheriff Dirksey. I had only met him one time. He came to my front door looking for my vote. I did vote for him, and I used that when I went back to him and made the email. I felt guilty using that, but we got the order. I emailed Sheriff Dirksey and said, would you consider using your helicopter for a ball drop to help out Teen Challenge? In 2 hours, I got a response back. He said, let me check it out. In 4 days, he said, absolutely, we're in. That was 4 years ago. We did the ball drop. We thought we raised $20,000. We did it out of Faith Home. Sold balls around town for $25 a piece. We raised sponsorship, too, asking people to buy a flag. And I see people right here in the council room that sponsored. They were $1,250 for a flag. Well, instead of raising $25,000, we raised $65,000.
Nice job. No
No paid expenses. The property, I'm a volunteer. I'm just trying to help out. So no paid promoters. The next year, we raised $69,000. In COVID, this last year, $73,000. So we're at $210,000 for Faith Home Teen Ranch. I was restless in my sleep because I didn't want to lose the helicopter. So I went back to Sheriff Dirksey and said, hey, what if we expand this? Would you keep the helicopter coming? He says, yes. So we approached Salvation Army. We approached the Turlock Gospel Mission and Police Activities League. Said, would you join us? They say, yes. And I got to hurry up. So we are now changed the name from Adult and Teen Challenge Ball Drop to the Ball Drop for Turlock. Our goal is $150,000. When you go down Main Street in Turlock right now, you see a lot of banners. It's a Ball Drop for Turlock. I want to let you know that's me. And I'm just a volunteer in Turlock, want to help out, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr.
And I have a
Hanson.
little mug here for you, Mayor. I'll put it over here.
All right, awesome. You got it.
Is that Louis Rocha?
Yes.
Tom Clark. You thought you'd never hear your name tonight, huh?
No. Mayor, council member, staff. My name's Tom Clark. I'd like to discuss something really exciting, traffic signal sensors. First of all, I've owned Dean's Pizza here for 16 years. I owned Godfather's before that for 16 years. I worked my way through college in the 80s, delivering pizzas at Pizza Hut. Delivered in this town for 40 years. I say that because I know the traffic signals and sensors in this town. And I know how they're supposed to work and how they do not work. I would like to recommend to the city some Measure A money and idea. Don't know if it's possible, I don't know your job or what you can do with that stuff, but fix the signals, the sensors. And I'm not talking about timing Monte Vista so they're all green, that's impossible. I'm talking about fixing the sensor at Fosburg, for example, which under construction, they've changed it. So now Fosburg is green, while Monte Vista is red. Randomly, no cars. Tuolumne and Golden State. I bank at Bank of Stockton. I shop at Smart and Final. I'm up and down that street. If you're traveling east on Tuolumne, going to make a left-hand turn onto Golden State, that turn signal is green for 35 seconds to 40 seconds, whether there's a car there or not. And it's been that way for over 10 years. Golden State and Gear Road now. It's another new one. Big Five. All those are like on a timer. So the turn signals to go into Big Five, if you're going north and south, going into Big Five or make a left onto Gear Road, they're going on, whether there's cars there or not. So I give those as examples as people sit in their cars, wasting money, polluting the air, spending money on fuel. I would recommend that we find somebody, and this is more of a staff for a question for staff afterwards. When a sensor breaks down, how is it fixed? Is that a city staffer or is that a contractor? I don't know the answer to that. I'd love to find out after I'm done if that's a simple thing. But it probably isn't simple because I would hope it would be done. But I would recommend that, our police officers, our city staffers that are driving around this town, make notes of traffic signals that are down. I've made a list, of Golden State and Monte Vista. I consider myself an expert on those two streets. Of every single traffic signal, and I made it back in February, and I made a few notations since then, lately. And these are for you guys to peruse at your goodwill.
Mr. Schultz, yes? Right here. Thank you, Tom. Peggy, thanks for waiting. Milt, you want 5A pulled. John?
And their cheeseburger pizza is the best, just so, at Dean's.
Okay.
John Gebelani. I just wanted to, that's not what I had on a card, but I wanted to mention something about home health care. Now, I've unfortunately had too much of that in the last few years and everything else like that for different reasons, operations and things like that. But it really is, just having somebody coming back and taking blood or helping you with your feeding tube or taking your blood pressure and the things that you don't have to do. That you have to, I go to Kaiser and I don't want to have to go all the way to Modesto to have my blood pressure checked or something like that. Then also is that I've written Kaiser about this, about having something that we can have a direct thing from the Turlock Transit Center directly to there, because it ain't easy to take a bus to the, Kaiser or Modesto or any of those medical centers and whatever. So that's just, down the road on things that would really help out, because usually I can find somebody to take me somewhere or things, or I can drive myself, but I'm getting older and traffic is not too good for old people anymore. The thing I had on my card was about prevailing wages. Now, this is something that's going to affect every single citizen who has anything to do with the federal government and everything else. They're going to rewrite the rules on prevailing wages, and that's supposed to be done in the next couple months and everything. So every contractor, every city, every municipality, every state, everybody's going to have to do it, and one man is responsible for it. That's the President of the United States. They're going to go from 25% to 50% on prevailing wages. So the estimate is tens of billions of dollars every single year for the taxpayers and everything else. There's no extra money. So if you guys got a thing coming up, you ain't going to get no money from the government. I say if you're going to do that, I mean, he's giving out money to everybody. So why not, you guys get together and say if you're going to raise prevailing wages so that you can get the union vote and all that kind of good stuff, that, that's fine and all that kind of good stuff, but make sure that, everybody else has the money, because the taxpayers are going to end up footing the bill for a lot of projects and everything else. He's going right around Congress and everything else like that. And if Congress wants to pass it and saying they want to do it, but this is a ruling that's gone on for it's been that way for about 90 years, 90 years, and everything else like that. And he wants to change it because he wants their vote. But whatever. Thanks.
Lori?
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, members of the public. Lori Smith, downtown business owner. I'm here tonight to talk about Liz Padilla and Helping Hands Ministry. Liz did not ask me to speak and does not even know I'm here. But it's been said recently that what Liz and her team do duplicates what the city workers do. For those that said this, I don't think you really know what Liz does. You should ask her about her background. I think you would be amazed. Liz cares passionately about the homeless. She's walked in their shoes. She's out there on the street side by side with them. She knows them by name. She cares about them. She gets to know them. She shows them love, but she also shows them tough love, and they respect her. I'm not sure of the exact amount, but many homeless have died on the streets. Liz has seen to it that they had a proper burial, and Liz has paid for those burials out of her own pockets. I don't think you can say that about any of the others that care for the homeless. Liz is also passionate about our downtown. Liz is not out there cleaning up alone and pocketing money. She's giving those that are willing to work something to take pride in. They clean the area and stuff that the city workers and landscapers wouldn't want to touch. Liz pays those workers with gift cards. Previously, Liz had a similar program which resulted in some participants receiving jobs in housing. Liz has never been the recipient of any city funding. A year ago, Liz lost her husband. Shortly after that, her granddaughter, who lives with Liz, had a freak accident that left her paralyzed. Through all of that, Liz's faith has carried her through, and she remains passionate about her calling. I hope what I have just told you clarifies just what Helping Hands does. Mayor, you have recently been mentioning Monte Vista Crossings. The first time was 2 weeks ago at the City Council meeting where you compared the downtown business revenue to Monte Vista Crossings, which consists of stores like Home Depot, Lowe's, Target, Safeway, Kohl's, and so many more. I'm not sure how that is even a fair comparison. The second time they were mentioned was when you suggested to Liz Padilla that she go to work at Monte Vista Crossings. You like to use the hashtag Turlock Strong. Turlock is strong because of the sum of its parts. It's all of Turlock. It's not any one area. And I want to say this does include the downtown businesses. Thank you.
Anyone else who has not filled out a card? No.
Do I have a clicker or?
You have a clicker.
The right one. Okay. Good evening. Before I start, I do want to publicly thank the Vice Mayor for the efforts that she went out of her way to help a couple homeless couples. I think that shows how you really care about people, and that's much appreciated, so thank you. Also, agenda consent item F, if you could pull that, please. And your person-centered care, boy, that would have been nice back when I was caring for my mother. But getting into my presentation. Okay, so I was informed last night that the fire station 32 was closed until further notice. I'd like to get an update about why this happened, the plan to minimize the impact to response time, because my understanding is that the crew and equipment is moving to Station 31, and then also when the station will be back in operation. Okay, let me see. Oh, I did that right. Hey. Okay. At the June 29th, 2021 Board of Supervisors meeting, they gave a grant to Turlock Gospel Mission for $550,000 for a rehabilitation training program. I'd like to see if we can get some metrics showing the results of this training program. Then at the November 16th Board of Supervisors meeting, according to their agenda, evidently Turlock Gospel Mission had applied for, and the Planning and Community Development Department proposed that they be given $400,000 for, and I put this up in a larger chart to make it easier for you to see, for day shelter renovation. Now, I find this interesting. Well, let me go to the next chart. This was also in that package that showed that Turlock Gospel Mission got about $2.2 million that year from the county. So my question is, I don't understand. The city council gave $330,000 to Turlock Gospel Mission for their day center in May of 2021, and it appears that they were asking the county for and potentially received from the county $400,000 later in the year, and now they're coming back and we're being told we need to give them another $400,000. Oh, I went too long. Okay. You got the gist of it.
We do. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Mr. Chiesa.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Vito Chiesa, Stanislaus County Supervisor. So a couple of things that I heard tonight. I have 3 kittens that I've already spayed and neutered. The only difference between me and the gal was that my wife won't tell me how much money she spent on them, because it looks like we're keeping them. I wanted to tell you a couple quick stories, and I'll address Mr. Bridegroom. A good story, I was out with the probation department, the high-risk adult offenders. I was doing probation visits with them. We ended up at the hospital because one of the people that were arrested had some issues. I know I had sent something to Chief Hedden, but Officer Kaufman, because there were 8 people standing by that couldn't leave the hospital, Officer Kaufman came by in 15 minutes, literally ran inside, wrote a citation. We were allowed to release the person on their own recognizance. Great work by Officer Kaufman that really allowed the 8 people to go back out and do their job. So big kudos to him. That right there, I'm going to give you my number. It's 209-525-6440 is the office, and my cell phone number is 209-531-5235. If you need that information, all you got to do is call, and I'll let you know if the money was paid. I don't know off the top of my head, but make sure you get a hold of me, or I'll try and find you. I think I have a home number for you. And then the last thing, the gentleman talked about the ball drop, and I was hoping he wasn't going to say the sheriff was using the helicopter. And Ron Bridegroom, I'll get that information for you, and I'll connect with someone to see about what the city did too. Thank you.
Anyone else? Hey. Easy, killboy.
Good evening, I'm Mary Jackson. I really appreciate everyone at our Animal Services Department. I think we're on our 3rd director, and she's trying her best to revive the state feral cat program so we can have them spay and neutered.
And so that's really good news. But in the meantime, I don't know what we're going to do because it takes about 2.5 months to get an appointment at the clinics. And so, anyway, it's the market forces, but it's really frustrating. I have an appointment, I think, the middle of October after calling in July. The thing I really want to talk to you guys about today is that we have a group of parents that are more than willing to work with the city's Parks and Recreation Department to start a winter basketball league for our kids. We used to have one, and we know that we need to work around the high school schedules because we only have so much space. But I will be in contact. I was talking to Karen in the back, and we do have people who are more than willing to coach and to help organize. And I believe there's a framework already there, but that we need to make sure that it gets set up and ready to go. And lastly, we have all these things go forward in planning, and I'm not pointing fingers at anyone, but the We Care Kitchen, because we've been serving off at the United Samaritans where the Navigation Center is, which, as I will say again, is being used a lot. When is it going to get finished? Because they were saying that they were waiting for inspectors. So whatever the holdup is, it would be really helpful since I have a washer and dryer in my garage waiting to go in there. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, let's close the public comment and move on to motion waiving reading of all ordinances on the agenda except by title.
So moved.
A motion and a second. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Bixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, passes 5-0. Thank you. Consent calendar, there was a request for A. Adam and F. Frank to be pulled. Are there any others for separate consideration?
Motion to approve is amended.
Second.
Motion and a second. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Bixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, passes on 5-0. All right, item A, let's go ahead and open it to the public. Milt, would you go ahead and come on up and ask, you asked for item A to be? Who is A then? It's on there. Okay, I apologize. I messed that up. I misread your writing. So,
Motion to approve
what?
5A.
Now we gotta open it now.
Oh, we just did.
Gotta see if anybody else will speak to that.
Motion to approve 5A.
All right, good
Second.
motion. A second. Okay, I
It
thought I
said
said.
5A on the card.
But, all right, so we have F twice. Okay, will you call the roll, please, for A?
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Bixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, passes 5-0. All right. We'll open the public to item F, reaffirming the proclamation of local emergency. Go ahead, Mo. And then Ron.
Yes, council staff and Turlock citizens, Milt Treeweiler. And I'm going to direct my question to Mr. Petrolakis and just state what happened 60 days ago. 60 days ago, Mr. Petrolakis, when I asked about this question of the proclamation of a local emergency in response to a continuing unsheltered homeless crisis, Mr. Petrolakis stated, it's a local tool. Under it, we're able to give one of the local shelters additional capacity. So I have 3 questions and then some comments. My first question is, how much money is this local shelter being paid to provide for this additional capacity? Second question, what fund is this money coming from for this additional capacity? And the third question is, how much money is in this fund? Recently, I went down to Gospel Mission, and they gave me a tour. So I hope you've all been down there. You can either talk to Christian or Robert, and they'll give you a tour. And I was very surprised. It's a very nice building, a very nice location. However, I was kind of surprised that the day that I was there were no men in the shelter, staying at the shelter. And there were only about 12 to 15 women staying in the shelter. And I thought it was kind of strange that we have a capacity, and if I recall the number, Mr. Petrolakis, I said for an additional 75 homeless. Well, I also I don't believe that We Care has been filling up their shelter either. So what is the reason for this proclamation of a local emergency in response to a continuing unsheltered homeless crisis. I don't see it. You've heard me talk about this, what? This must be the fourth, fifth time that I've talked about it. I don't understand. So I'd like some explanations. Thank you very much.
Ron?
Good evening again. Okay, briefly, going back to the February 22nd, 2022 council meeting, an awful lot of twos in there, where everything happened, it seemed. We got the homeless ad hoc committee report, and during the discussion, Councilmember Larson asked, how would the public know if the recommendations were successful? And Councilmember Moniz said that there would be metrics. Okay, you specifically mentioned the word metrics. And you also stated along the lines that if the programs are not monitored and followed closely, they will fail, okay, which I completely agree with. So that was 18 months ago, but I don't remember hearing anything about what the metrics are going to be. So I'm hoping we will hear that in the, August 31st meeting? Is it the August 31st? Okay. And yes, we would, there have been questions that a number of us who have been getting the daily report on all the different shelters and how many beds were available. There's been questions there because sometimes, well, at We Care, it's been reported 4 beds available every single day for a period of time. Sometimes it was DNR, did not report, and Milt just talked about not that many people, Turlock Gospel Mission, but we've been getting reports of that being basically filled. So that raises questions in our minds too. So, okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, let's close the public comment on this item and bring it back. Mr. Petulakis, we have got a few questions for you, sir.
I don't think I got them all down, but I think I got the gist of it. That's a great question. I don't think any money is being paid now because that part of it's not in effect, but I don't know that. I mean, that's like, So the point of the emergency is it provides the flexibility if additional space is needed. And so depending on whether they're full or not, I don't think the city's been told that they are full and they want to avail themselves of the additional space. The agreement we had with Turlock Gospel Mission was for the different overflows. There were different levels here, right? It was for different overflow space at the fairgrounds. And so there was an agreement in effect for that if we ever needed to use that space. So that agreement is no longer in effect because after COVID, the fairgrounds has gone back to kind of using their facility on a more regular basis. So the point is, I agree, it's a pretty narrow use of it, but it does provide the flexibility to go beyond the 49 permitted spaces at Turlock Gospel Mission. If the council is satisfied with 49 spaces at the Gospel Mission, it's certainly within your right to terminate the emergency, and then, that's kind of the decision, I think, on that part of it.
Yeah,
And it's actually interesting, because I don't think and I'm not remembering, and we can check it, I think that, I don't think, maybe Katie remembers, I don't remember if there was I remember there was money needed for if we opened up the fairground space and we contracted with Turlock Gospel Mission. I don't think there was ever a payment for the 49, to what the additional spaces they could accommodate there. But I don't remember that for sure.
Chief Hedden?
Yeah, Milt, to specifically address your question, I'm not sure what time of day you went down there, but they don't always have people in the shelter during the daytime hours at TGM. The capacity issue is a big thing. We're getting reports that the shelter is full. I understand that it's being used to the capacity of 80. 49 beds, if we eliminated the emergency, would be a tremendous impact. We would see that many homeless out on the streets rather than using the shelter services. So,
All right. Comments? What's the will of council?
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Bixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, it passes 5-0. Thank you. Hopefully the metrics will be discussed in your ad hoc.
They are.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, final readings, there are none. Public hearings, we'll start with item 7A, the Perfect Union Development Agreement, and look at that. Ms. Werner, hello. I was expecting Ms. Quintero to jump up. I just wasn't even seeing you there.
No, she's handed everything off to me now.
Uh-oh.
Good evening, Mayor Bublak, members of the council, and members of the public. Tonight, I'm just coming before you to talk about the item that is the annual review of the development agreements for two of our dispensaries in town. The first one being Perfect Union. It's the.
Can you stop for just a second? Mr. Treeweiler, oh, thank you. Go ahead.
It's the annual review of the development agreement between the city of Turlock and Perfect Union. The ordinance that was passed by council, ordinance 1263, and the municipal code require that the development agreements be reviewed annually. And the intent of the annual review of the development agreement is to determine whether or not Perfect Union has operated in good faith with the terms and conditions of the development agreement. So I just kind of want to walk through a few things that we've looked at. So Perfect Union, as you know, operates at 2500 North Golden State Boulevard. And the property is zoned community commercial, which allows cannabis dispensaries in that zoning district with the conditional use permit and the development agreement. At the September 5th, 2019 meeting, the Planning Commission recommended that the City Council adopt the ordinance to approve the development agreement. And subsequently, they did apply for their conditional use permit, and that was granted by the Planning Commission in March of 2020. So Perfect Union opened for business on September 18th, 2020. So at the June 1st, 2023 Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission reviewed the conditional use permit annually that is required under the development agreement, as well as reviewing the terms and conditions of the development agreement to make a recommendation to the City Council. So just to kind of go through the things that we talked about at the Planning Commission, they were in compliance with their conditional use permit. There are no active code violations, building code violations, so they are in compliance with the requirements from the building division. And the annual audits and the compliance checks have been completed, and Perfect Union is in good standing. The public benefit amount that Perfect Union has deposited through July 31st was, and I believe that was the 2 years prior also, was $962,500, and we can, if you have any questions about that, I'll refer to Director Moreno on that. So we also looked at, we contacted the police department to see if there were any concerns with the police department. So in the 3 years that Perfect Union has operated, there have been 13 calls for service, of which 2 resulted in the officer actually filing a case. So just to kind of give the public and council a little bit of more information, I'm sure the mayor is well aware of this, that when responding to calls, the location is indexed by the incident, where the incident occurred, or where the officer was going to respond to make contact with the individuals. So if the officer had to respond to Perfect Union's parking lot, then that address for Perfect Union would have been indexed in the call system. So out of those 13 calls, Only 2 resulted in the officer actually filing a report. One of them was the security guard had asked an individual to leave the premises after they made their purchase. They were loitering, which is, something that they're not supposed to do. Then they were confronted by, with the individual, so the Perfect Union made that call. The other call for service was someone had stolen a sign off the fence. So out of those 13 calls, there were only 2 that actually resulted in a report being filed. At the June 1st meeting, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend that the City Council determine that Perfect Union has complied in good faith with the terms and conditions of their development agreement. So I'll take any questions if you have any.
Questions? Is there a representative that wants to speak regarding for this? Nope, okay. All right, let's open it to the public. Perfect Union, anybody? Perfect Union? Come on up. Ron, I would like to thank you because this is the first of annual, and I think it's because of your impetus. So thank you for that.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. And that basically was what I was going
I'm sorry.
No. I was going to talk about that subject, okay?
Okay.
Because my concern is about procedures, checks and balances, things like that, okay? This was in the development agreement itself. It was also in our city ordinances. Now, the development agreement is a very long document, okay, so it's kind of easy to not see it. But the city ordinances, on development agreements, it's not that long, okay? And it's not that hard to understand. And this is just one example of things that were missed in the cannabis process, okay? And my concern is for the city to have proper procedures and checks and balances in place so things like this don't happen in the future, okay? And I would like to know what those procedures, checks and balances, I kind of base this upon the airline industry, to where when you have a crash, they have an investigation, and they go through and they lay out all the dirty laundry, no matter where it lies, the pilots, the maintenance people, the manufacturer, the air traffic controller, or whatever. And they do that so that they can learn lessons, okay, and change things in the industry so that airline travel becomes safer, and has become very safe because of that process. And I don't know how it could be done here, but I really think we need to understand, and I think it needs to be made public. How did we get to this point? How did the city attorney at the time, not our current city attorney, but how did the city attorney at the time and staff members, how were these things overlooked? How did we get here? How do we prevent it from happening again? So, thank you.
Anyone else?
Again, I'm Mary Jackson. This is something that I have spent a lot of time dealing with, and I want to echo Mr. Bridegroom's comments. Comparing it to the airline industry is spot on. And to be fair, 4 of you are mostly new with this process. Mr. Petrolakis is new, and so is Mr. Wilson. And they weren't here. And I think the biggest frustration when we're dealing with this is with the pilot cannabis program, is that there was so much that was promised that we were told was going to happen, and the complete opposite. It was like, whoosh, 180-degree turn. And so, and it's been about 4 or 5 years. I was looking at all my emails that I've saved, and I've sent some background, because again, there's 4 of you that are brand new and haven't been through this process. But I'm just kind of wondering why in the middle of the ad hoc committee, which Ms. Abram is chairing and with Mr. Bixel and some planning commissioners, and they just had, I believe, one meeting, why in the middle of this are we trying to push these through for another 5 years? Can we not wait? To me, that would be prudent to wait till they're finished, because I feel like you're putting the cart before the horse, first of all. You know, because they're looking at the entire program, which I have so many red flags about. And I'll talk about that when we're talking about Firehouse. But I did make phone calls. I mean, this was announced on Friday. And, we just started school. We're in the second week of school. I talked to the superintendent, was not talked to. The principal at Osborne was not contacted. There's a new principal. I don't have skin in the game. My kids aren't at Osborne. They haven't been there for 3 years. But that doesn't mean I don't care and I don't have the same concerns, and there are parents there. So I'm not going to get into that part of it, but I just don't understand. I don't understand, A, how this got on the agenda. I'd like that question answered, because I did send an email asking. And I'd also like to know right now who took money from either the growing industry, distribution, anything involved with cannabis. And it was clear on Ms. Bublak's. But I don't think most normal, regular people have followed this as well as I have, and I think it's very difficult sometimes to do what we learned in Sacramento or any time in politics, which is to follow the money. And so, again, I'm going to stress, I don't understand why we're going forward with new 5-year development agreements when you have an ad hoc committee who's trying to look at the entire process. I mean, I'm not against having lounges next to these institutions if they're 1,000 feet from a church, park, or school. So I think they need to finish their job before you start to do this. Doesn't make any sense to me.
Anyone else? Michael?
A lot of Biden citizens around here. I just want everyone to know at home and everywhere else that this project came from Workforce to solve. So.
Awesome, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, let's close the public comment on the first item here. And Mr. Petrolakis, I think there was a question for you.
Yeah, the action tonight is, as Mr. Bridegroom pointed out, is the annual review required under the statute, the California state law, which is repeated in the government code. It doesn't extend the development agreements by another 5 years. That is sort of being addressed by the ad hoc committee. So it's a preview of things to come, I think, more than what's before the council tonight. And I guess I could add my thanks to Mr. Bridegroom for being very repetitive on this issue enough that, I have the handicap of having many cities in my private practice that never do annual reviews. So it took every bit of his repetition to get it on top of the stack. So I appreciate it.
All right, discussion? What's the will?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Bixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
No, and it passes 4-1. Congratulations. And we'll move on to the next item, and you're still here? You couldn't pass it on?
Yep.
All right.
Get everything together. So this item is the development agreement, the annual review of the development agreement for Firehouse. And again, Firehouse is at 1601 West Main Street. And as the annual review is required under the ordinance of 1260 and the TMC of the Turlock Municipal Code of 9-5-91. Again, the intent of the annual review is just to review the development agreement for that Firehouse is operated in good faith in the terms and conditions of the development agreement. So the ordinance was approved, the development agreement ordinance was approved in 2019, and the city council granted the conditional use permit at that same meeting. Firehouse began open for business in August of 2020. So again, we went through, the conditional use permit. The planning commission did find that they were in compliance with the terms and conditions of the conditional use permit. The items that are very similar that we did see. They have no building code violations. The annual audits and compliance checks have been completed, and they are in good standing. Their public benefit amount through July 31st was a little over $2.6 million. So in the 3 years that they've operated, there have been 48 calls for service. 6 resulted in an officer filing a case, and 1 report was auto theft that was taken in error. So out of those 48 calls, there were 5 that actually resulted in a case being filed by the officer. And again, the address is indexed based on where the officer may have actually been reporting to talk to the individuals. The 5 incidents that did occur were, there was a robbery, damage to the building, disturbances, again, individuals who are not leaving the property when the security guard's asking them to leave. And again, the Planning Commission did vote unanimously to recommend that the City Council determine that that firehouse is in good faith with the terms and conditions of the development agreement.
Okay, questions? Does the representative want to speak? Fair enough, okay. Open it to the public. Go ahead. Yeah.
Terry Shaver. I seem to recall that when this all started out, there was a lot of discussion about signage. And A Perfect Union did their part. They kept their part of the bargain. They took down that huge sign that has been there, and they put in a monument sign. That's where I learned about monument signs. They did what they were supposed to do. The firehouse still says Waffle Shop. On this big sign, it still says Waffle Shop, and I don't believe they've met the terms of the agreement.
Anyone else?
Again, Mary Jackson. So this is sort of my bone of contention. I still don't think it's 600 feet away from Osborne. If you look at the corner where kids play, that parallels to the cemetery. It's very interesting what was set out and what we first were told. We were told that they would meet with us, the one man that was hired to be like the front person or the face of the dispensary. It was extremely frustrating. And I appreciate that the calls that were made to the firehouse, and I'm not saying that the dispensary itself is the issue, but the hotel behind it, if you look at, and I know I've sent it to you before, the number of calls have grown exponentially to that hotel, and we were promised that it was going to get better. So Firehouse goes in, and there was the questions. You saw photos that their attorney put up showing that there were no kids walking to school. Well, it was summer, if you go and walk, kids walk to school to Osborne. And now there is the Turlock Adult School, and the continuation school is behind the movie theater complex. And so there are more kids walking. Older kids walking. My main concern, and one of our parents spoke of this, is that there was a robbery in Stockton, and one of the bank tellers was closed, and she worked at that bank. Our concern is the safety of the kids. My girls thought that they had zero lockdowns. They just practiced. They only had 1. And I will go and pull. Everyone's like, well, there's alcohol stores. They don't have problems there. That's not where they have the problems. So I just, I've walked the neighborhood several times over the different years, and I talked to 4 people today about it, and they are frustrated that they're not heard. They feel like it's a waste of time to talk to you, and not one of the 4 people I spoke to can say anything positive about it, or the hotel, because we were promised that hotel was going to be cleaned up. The same people that own the firehouse own the hotel, which is by the Budget Inn on McHenry and Modesto, I believe. And they had a hole in the fence, and I'm sure that's been fixed by now because it's been talked about enough. But it's just frustrating when you're told one thing, and the complete opposite is done. They're like, why are we even talking or coming or watching? Because we just get ignored. It's all about the money. People told me that a long time ago. It was all about the Benjamins. But I'm here much more concerned about school safety and the kids' safety. Thank you.
Michael,
Can I do one last thing to talk about?
it's got to be about the marijuana right now, though.
Huh?
It has to be about marijuana, the
Signs
firehouse.
and Wonders?
Only firehouse.
Just kidding.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Anybody else? Mr. Warder.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. We've never been contacted by the school district. I really don't have any clue what the issues are. I've had communications with the superintendent in the past, especially when we opened. She's got my email. Ms. Jackson's got my email. I'm easy to reach if there's ever any problems. We're not aware of any problems with the school district, and no problems are ever identified, ever, in public, so that we can even address them. I think Firehouse has done a pretty good job of operating. It's raised $2.6 million for the city. It has contributed to at least 4 different local charities. Actually, the affiliates of Firehouse throughout the community in Stanislaus County have donated an additional $500,000 to local charities. The property owner here does not own any hotels, so I'm not sure what the reference is with respect to hotels or problems that relate to that. We have also are looking to start a new charitable effort with some local tutoring efforts because, as you know, our schools are having problems. They're graduating kids that can't read and can't do math. We're in the lower 1/3 of the state, yet we have the highest graduation rate in the state. So we're going to focus on that and try and continue to participate in the community. If you have any questions about our operations, oh, by the way, in terms of the annual review, I do appreciate Mr. Bridegroom bringing it to the attention, but to be clear, the state and the city every year, several times, inspects and conducts reviews of the operations. So while there was a mistake that we didn't come to the council and do that, I don't want anybody or the community to think that there wasn't inspections happening. They're constantly being reevaluated by the state. You have a consultant that you've hired that comes out and checks everything that's going on. They're required to submit to audits with respect to all the documents that they're filing. So in terms of the payments that are due, what's owed, the security reviews are happening. I mean, they come in and review. They come in and look at the security cameras and say they'll pick a date 90 days ago to make sure that the entire premises was covered by security. So there is a lot that is happening behind the scenes all the time. I'm glad we're doing this, and again, Mr. Bragdon brought it to everybody's attention. That's fantastic, and that's what we're here for. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, let's close the public comment and bring it back.
Motion to approve 7B.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Pixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
No, and it passes 4-1. Congratulations. Moving on, Road Doctor, you still awake? Let's do this. All right. Action item 8A. Way past your bedtime, huh?
Way past my bedtime. All right. I will try to make this as brief as possible. Mayor, members of the council, good evening. The item before you is the proposed rehabilitation of Gear Road for the entire corridor from Golden State Boulevard to Taylor Road. Portions, as you know, are in assessment district, but the proposal is to basically evaluate the condition of the entire corridor and bring back to the council a proposal on different alternatives and options that we have for treatment of the pavement. Before I forget here, if you go to the second page of the staff report, there's a nice table that shows the pavement condition index for each section of the roadway. In some sections, we have northbound and southbound, and you can see there's a good variation in the pavement condition index, which basically tells us the same option or the pavement treatment is not suitable for the entire corridor, obviously. So for us to determine exactly what we need to do in each section of the roadway, we need to take a number of pavement cores. Pavement cores basically go through the existing pavement, the base that is under it, and also we will take soil samples of the native soil or whatever soil is under the pavement. So this all tells us exactly what kind of a strategy we need to have in each section of the roadway. For example, if you look at the pavement condition index here, and you have driven the road many, many times, and you can relate to this very easily, the pavement condition index very much indicates and reflects the condition of the roadway as we drive it. So from Canal all the way to Monte Vista, for example, in all likelihood, that is total reconstruction. But again, our engineering analysis, our recommendations back to the council is based on pavement cores and the pavement designer's evaluation and recommendations. From there on, all the way to Calaveras, perhaps is just the grind and overlay. North of that, pavement is generally in good condition, but like I said, most of it is in assessment district, but we will come back with some sort of rehabilitation or preservation alternative for those areas. For example, if you see pavement condition above 80, it is very likely that the only treatment that you need is slurry surfacing of some sorts. But again, it's been 8 years since that pavement was placed. So the pavement cores will tell us a lot about the actual condition and exactly what we have under the pavement. And what type of expectancy, life expectancy, we should design these pavement treatments for. I don't go into, unless you want me to, into the exact detail of the scope of services. We are going to 30% simply because we want to collect as much data as possible to know what the next steps are going to be. What sections require what type of pavement rehabilitation. We bring back those recommendations to the council along with plans that we call 30%. That's the level of development, level of detail that we show on the plans. Those will be brought back to the council along with our recommendations. We will develop a construction cost estimate and develop schedules that are more realistic than the schedules that we have here. These are preliminary schedules. We will refine them and bring them back to you at that time. The 30% basically helps us also determine the scope of the final design phase. So when we come back here, we solicit your input. Then we will go to the public. We will have public information meeting and collect information from and feedback from the public. We will review all of that and come back to the council with a scope of the final design. At that point, you will know what the cost of that is going to be. You will have a very realistic schedule for the construction. Sorry about that. I also mentioned here that we are going to look at different sources of funding. Several are available. So depending on the type of funding that hopefully we are successful in landing, the schedule is going to be affected. Now, the two schedules that are here, like I said, they are very preliminary, and if you look at them, you will see basically the same or very much the same timeline for completion of the design and going into bidding of the project. regardless of whether we use local funding for the whole project or we have grant funding for it. If we go after grant funding, depending on whether it's state funding that we will land or federal funding, the money will become available to us July 1st, 2025, if it is state funding, or October 1st, 2025, if it is federal funding. Until then, we cannot advertise. If we use local funding, we will come back to the council and we will show that if you use only local funding, what the potential cost to the city is going to be and how we can actually phase this corridor into segments and potentially expedite the final design and construction of it. So those options, that amount of information will be developed and will be brought back to the council for you to evaluate and give us directions on. I believe that mostly covers what I wanted to cover here. Just wanted to recognize Ed Noriega with Mark Thomas and Company. They are our design consultant, and he's here in attendance. Very patiently, he drove from Fresno to be here. So I will
Forest
stop
roads.
right there. We are ready to answer your questions.
Questions for the road doctor?
I think you probably said it, but when was it that you think that we'll have the design and or?
The 30% takes a few months here for us to go through. The funding call for funds will be available, call for projects will be, we expect that later this year and early next year, the results of the applications will be known by the end of 2024. And if it is state funding, July 1st, 2025 funds will become available. Federal funding would be October 1st, 2025.
Okay, let's open it to the public. Anyone wishing to speak regarding this?
Hi, I'm Ryan Taylor. I guess I'm just curious, how are the roads picked for these, for this maintenance update and such? Because, I mean, I know just off the top of my head, Fifth Street is, in my opinion, way worse condition than Gear Road. Not saying Gear doesn't need some loving, but if we need to really think about which streets to fix, something like Fifth Road definitely needs some good care. So I'm just curious, how are we picking these streets? Are they just randomized? We just draw one out of a hat, or do we have a list somewhere, a master list of ordering and such? Just how is this process being done?
Anyone else? All right, let's close public comment. Mr. Bezos, how do we pick these?
Well, we had a consultant a year and a half ago develop, survey the entire city roadway network and develop a pavement management system for us and update the database that we use. We are not the only community. A lot of communities use Street Saver. It basically is the condition of all the streets. It will show me for each street segment, and I could actually prioritize those or rank them based on the lowest to the highest. And that is something that I've done. The council placed the priority on districts 1 and 2. So I basically focus on the lowest pavement condition index in those areas. And again, remember, you can have a length of a road divided into several sections as the Street Saver shows, and each one can have a different pavement condition index. So to make a project, I have to look at the entire roadway. So you may see a road being proposed, it's because 2/3 of it is in bad condition. 1/3 of it may not be in a bad condition. But for the purpose of making a project, I'm taking the entire length of that project. And also I look at other streets in the area and see what other streets can be turned into their own projects, and how we can combine different streets into a bid package potentially and minimize the impact into the neighborhood, or be able to have the contractor in a neighborhood take care of several streets and then move on to another neighborhood. So there's quite a bit that goes into this. It is not random. It is mostly based on the condition of the street from the lowest then on up.
I have a follow-up to that. So,
Yes.
do you anticipate that this project will be combined into projects with nearby streets?
Not
when
this one.
this one comes forward?
Not this one, not combining it with this. We could for the final, but I don't believe this, because we are going after funding. So we have to have a basis, we have to have a project description, and not continue to change that because we are submitting for funding. We can add to it with our own funding when we go to advertisement. So that opportunity is there, but once you apply for funding, your project description, project length, project limits are pretty much set there. So we can look at that and see, do you have any specific streets in mind? There are several streets.
Oh, I just know, driving to Rayleigh's on,
Yes.
on Regis there,
Yes.
like, is pretty terrible.
Yes. Yes, let me just, you are.
That was not my point of this,
No,
but just if you
you're-
need a suggestion.
No, I actually know that I've driven that area quite a bit. You will see in the next few months, I'm working on a number of streets to bring back to the council. And you will see that I will ask for us to step out of districts 1 and 2 at that time a little bit and look at Andre Lane, for example, Regis, Niagara, and a few other streets in the area. Gettysburg is one. To do those projects, because if you start impeding traffic or taking up traffic on Gear Road, you need to have a few other roads that are done ahead of Gear Road. So Gear Road being in 2025, late 2025, it would be good to go ahead and look at Andre Lane. You will see that we will do a portion of Johnson Road. We will do the rest of Quincy. So there are other arterials or collectors that we are trying to free up because we are going to look at tying up Gear Road. Dell's Lane has to come at some point. So there's quite a few items that I'm looking at, and the next round, hopefully, that is my goal, not just hopefully, will be more aggressive than the 22 that you approved on April 25. The purpose being design, design, and design, and then bid when the opportunity is there. Have projects that are shovel-ready.
So how do we achieve that goal? You want to go bigger. We want you to go bigger. How do we get that?
I'm young, I can dream, right?
Right? I like it.
We have 3 design consultants, and we have the opportunity to bring on board a number 4.
Sweet.
If that is the case, then in the next round, I will bring in, just like we did last time on in April 25, a master agreement and the first task order for your consideration and approval. So we can do that. At the same time, if you're designing and going into construction, you also need someone to be the construction manager. So we need resources there. We right now have only 1 CM. So you will see in the next couple of months, I will issue an RFQ for master agreements with construction management firms to have minimum 2, and it would be good to have 3 on board. Simply because when the need arises, you need to bring those forces under contract and be able to have them manage all this construction. So there is some method to all of this, and you will see step by step how the whole program is coming together and picking up a lot of momentum.
All right, what's the will?
Motion to approve.
Second. We have a motion and a second. You can call the roll, please. I did.
Six more items.
Was I that
Councilmember Abe?
Yes.
Oh. Councilmember Bixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, it passes 5-0. Thank you, Road Doctor.
Thank you.
Okay, city manager updates, Miss Eddie.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, very good. Good evening, council, staff, public. We have 3 items that we'll be talking about under city manager updates. The first, we have Maris here, and she did provide an update for We Care. It didn't get into the agenda packets, but they're being passed out right now, and Nicole's putting them in the back.
What else you got?
Oh, okay. The second is the upcoming ad hoc committee meetings regarding cannabis and homeless. And we have the cannabis, we're looking to schedule that on October 26th, but we're waiting to get confirmation on that. We understand that one of the members will be out, so we've pushed it out to be able to allow that member to be participate in the meeting. There is a homeless discussion on August 31st at 5 p.m. And the last item before Maris gets up is Chief Hunter, can you please give us an update regarding the fire station?
That's Hunter Ski.
Absolutely. Thank you. Before I begin, I just wanted to echo Ray Garcia's comments in closing. He spoke about the quality of the staff that works here in the city. I've just been here for about a month and a half, and I've experienced those same things. There's good people here working for the city every day to make sure that the community is taken care of. So speaking with respect to Station 32, if you recall, a few weeks ago, you approved repairs to Station 33 as well as Station 32. Those repairs to Station 33 are coming to a close. Station 32s were a little bit more extensive. We had some additional work as the roof was opened up. We had some additional questions that we wanted to allow the engineering to look at. And in that process, that was completed and a recommendation was given, but we weren't able to get the roof, the contractor in there to seal up the roof. But we did work with the contractor to have some emergency coverings put in place, but unfortunately on Saturday evening, we had some remnants of a storm that came through. It was short duration, but high intensity, but like any roof that's not fully covered, the water found the leaks. And so as a result, the crews did the best they could to limit the spread of the water. They were in there over the weekend, and then we were able to get a restoration company out Monday morning to begin that process of drying out the station. Well, if anybody that has experienced what it takes to get water out of a building, it's a lot of equipment that moves air and dehumidifiers. And so as a result, it's not conducive to a working environment. And so what we've opted to do is the crews will work in the station the majority of the time, but if they need to shower, they need to get some rest, then we'll utilize Station 31 for that. And that's going to be in the short term. Long term, we're evaluating additional plans until those repairs can be completed and the station fully repaired.
And Chief, can you just address the calls for service and the delays in time? Because I don't think people realize that our staff is in there during the peak daytime hours.
Absolutely. So the crews will be there during the majority of the time. They'll actually be out of the station for a limited amount of time, either to rest, to shower, or the reality is anytime a fire engine's on a call, they're not in the station. So the impacts to the public should be minimal, taking into account the situation as a whole. That's something that we know is very important, is getting on scene quickly when the call comes in, and that's something that we try to do every time a call comes in.
Do you have an approximate time when the station's gonna be dry and usable?
We're waiting for a report back from the restoration company. We anticipate that on Friday, at the end of this week. That's what we've been told. And then as far as the completion of the roof repairs, we hope that's inside of, this is strictly the roof, that would be within the next 10 days.
And if there's need for further in-depth, you're going to let us know so we can do it. I don't want us to wait for a meeting. I would consider it health and safety, and you could have the Mr. Moreno fund it or whatever. I don't want us to wait if there's some sort of mold or something like that.
Correct. The city manager, my understanding, the city manager does have authority for emergency repairs, and absolutely we'll do what we can to correct this as quickly as possible.
Awesome.
You did perfect.
You stole Isaac's line.
I'm good with it.
All right, Mary, do you want to come up and tell us? Sorry you had to wait so long.
I know.
Didn't you learn a lot?
Yes, I did.
As you're retiring?
I did. I did learn a lot. Hi, I'm Mary Sturdivant from the Week Air Program. Good evening. Late evening. Almost my bedtime. So I just want to give my monthly report. And this is for July of this year for the Navigation Center. So as you can see, during the month of July, we saw 78 unduplicated people. So this is, so from June, we're taking it from the day we opened, June 7th. So this is unduplicated. So it's 78 new people that we had not seen at all in that period of time. And then the total individuals for the day, it has, as you see, the total for the days listed, but the total for the whole month was 676 people came and used the Navigation Center. So we're seeing a lot of people. It's becoming quite a process, and I keep track of we keep track of the 911 calls, you know, so just like the marijuana people. So as you see that most of them were, there was a guest that trespassed into the back of the building and had broke in and was causing quite a stir back there and dumping tables. And so we did call the police and they did come out, and he agreed to go for psychiatric help, and the police department took care of that for us. So that was a good one. Then on the 10th, he explained that he had been robbed and felt that he absolutely had nothing left to live for, and he was fearful that if he didn't get help, he might harm himself. So the police arrived. They called an ambulance due to him requesting a mental health hold. And so he went cooperatively to the mental health. And then the 18th, there was someone who jumped the fence, opened the gate, and stole one of the bikes. We have a fenced-in area for the guys to leave their bikes in, and somebody jumped the fence and stole one of the guests' bikes. And then it says we called the non-emergency number, but people said that the person was not somebody who has been using the facility, the witnesses that saw this happen. So, and then I talk about JJ. This is JJ Madruga. He runs the Navigation Center. He went outside to help a guest get his bike, and he noticed that he wasn't doing okay. He offered him water. When he came back outside with the water, the guest was stumbling and crying and unable to speak. He called 911. The guest was taken to Memorial Hospital for treatment. And JJ followed up with the ER, who stated that he was being admitted. So that we took care of his belongings while he was out of the way. So I wanted to tell you I want to share this, that they always say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, I want to share this story because it was yesterday. So we have a gentleman that stays at the shelter, and his wife stays elsewhere. And we were able to get him housed. So through the help of the shelter, through the help of the Navigation Center, JJ spent a lot of time working with the guy to try to get his birth certificate and different kinds of things. Through Jeffrey Lewis's mobile health clinic, we were able to get the doctors to sign the disability paperwork. And so And then our PSH, our Permanent Supportive Housing Case Manager, yesterday we housed them. So that was a really awesome, thing. But it took all of us put together to really make that happen. So we're also hoping to house another person this week that is staying at the shelter in our Permanent Supportive Housing Program. So the Navigation Center is really doing a really good job. And a lot of people are making use of it. Telecare from Modesto, mental health department service, they're coming down, I don't know, a couple times a week. I know they were there today and visiting with people. We have a therapist on site that comes through us through La Familia. And she's there 5 days a week. And she's doing an awesome job with talking to the guys. And the guys are, it's the people coming in it's really working really good. So thank you for your work at this.
So with that hope, then you have no intention of retiring?
Right. We couldn't be so lucky.
And Cassandra, thank you for coming and seeing the Navigation Center. Appreciate that your interest in seeing how the program is going. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Council items for future consideration. Councilman Rayburn?
Yes, I have one. So I recently shared with City Manager Wilson a picture of what I think is this really cool, I'm trying to look exactly what it is. It's like a steel vehicle barrier road blocking thing that I saw when I was traveling with my family in San Luis Obispo, and they have those at their farmers market to help provide an extra level of safety when there are public events that pedestrians are going to be in the streets. And, I know that this council or, other city administrators have looked into the addition of like bollards and things, but those are quite expensive. These are totally mobile and can be deployed at different places for different events. We have so many great events that happen, particularly in downtown, our farmers market, our makers market. There's an event coming up this weekend, public events, and all the people that travel to join us in Turlock as well.
Councilman Pisco.
Yeah, I was wondering how we're doing with the council approval spreadsheet that we talked about last time. So want to keep that top priority. And also wondering where we're at with answering the public's questions from council meetings. I know we had said before that we wanted to have the answers online. And so I'm just wondering where we're at with that. And I'd kind of like to hear from the city manager on those. Thank you.
Anything? All right. We got questions, comments, and announcements?
Yeah, I just thank you, Maris, for telling us about the We Care Navigation Center, and I just wanted to kind of share my experience. I showed up unannounced on a Wednesday at 10 a.m., so I thank you, Mr. Madruga, and your case manager there for giving me an impromptu tour. What I saw there at that middle of the day, just to share with the community that hasn't had an opportunity to be there, there was 20 or so people there at that time who were in a safe location, who were not, spending time in parks or in alleyways or in business entrances. And, I was so impressed by the ideas that you had when I was asking, what can we do to make this better? And I really I see a lot of hope in this project. This is not going to be the solution to all of the problems that Turlock sees when it related to homelessness issues. But I really feel like this program can serve as like the fixed point with which we can direct all the other services and all the other groups that are doing things, because I do think it's making good progress, and there's definitely a lot of room for improvement, not in a bad way, but just in there's a lot of opportunity there. So I hope that the ad hoc committee takes that into mind and is able to really focus on what we can do and how we can make progress.
All right. Last Saturday at Pittman High School, there was a book giveaway, book and school supply giveaway. Turlock, Amazon, and Reading Heart sponsored it. It was a great event. There were thousands of parents and kids there. They had thousands of books, huge pallets full of books that they laid out. The kids came in, they went through them, picked their books out. And next year, I'd love for the city of Turlock to get involved a little bit more. Maybe do that same thing we do at Columbia and do like a hot dog lunch. Anyway, let's go big. Congratulations to our 3 new police officers, Officer Tyler Ward, Officer Natalie Soto, and Officer Brandon Ruiz, and also congratulations to Catherine Walthrop, promoted to Animal Services Supervisor. And a big shout out to Turlock Fire Department. You guys went above and beyond the call of duty on this one with the building. The hurricane, tropical storm, water goes to the lowest point, and the lowest point was the floor of the fire station. Not only did the cell sit basically right over the top of the fire station, it also swirled, because this is a hurricane or tropical storm, and so water is going to get up underneath whatever. The contractor came out and tried to get it watertight. Doesn't happen in construction, and in a normal storm it would have been fine. This is not a normal storm. But the Turlock Fire Department guys, they stayed there when they could have gone home, or gone to Fire Station 31 and spent the night over there. They spent that first night at Station 32, basically being the bucket brigade and making sure that the Turlock fire station was not harmed any more than it was. So thank you to Turlock Fire for thinking about the city first. When they could have thought about themselves, they didn't. They put the city ahead of themselves. So big shout out. Thank you.
Ray Garcia, what a guy. My heart is broken tonight. But he has earned that retirement, and I congratulate him. And Eric, it's no reflection on you, but guys like that are a very rare bird. And in fact, I could probably go as far as saying that they are just endangered species, because the shoes that man has filled and the hats that he has worn in the last 40 years in this town, I don't think that department is ever going to be the same without him, and he will be sorely missed. But congratulations to him tonight, and thank you for all of the years and the hard work that you selflessly put into the city of Turlock. I hope he's still listening.
Can-do guy. He never was like, I don't want to do that. I never heard that. He was always just like, yeah, we'll take care of it. I went out to the senior center, saw the missing accordion orange doors. It was super sad, cried. It's looking great. The only thing that happened was a young lady, chronologically gifted lady, said that it was hard for her to be on the toilets. It's harder when you get older to sit lower, so hopefully we can look at trying to do something with that. But it's looking great, and they're very appreciative out there, so that's awesome. The books thing, Vice Mayor and I killed ourselves carrying these books back and forth, sweating like a dog. It was a great event. A lot of people that you don't normally get to see were there, so it was really good. And then shout out to the police department, a constituent in Councilmember Abram area called because somebody was breaking into their truck. You guys set up the drone, caught the person, and off you go. So that's sweet.
Drone again. Woo.
All right, we do not have closed session, and therefore we won't be reporting out from closed session, and we will see you all. This is an adjournment. Thank you.
Drone.